What's going on, everybody? It's Roku back with some more League of Legends content, back with more face cam videos because my barber lined me up. I am drinking Twinings Earl Grey tea, Earl Grey black tea. It's British, and I absolutely love it. It's delicious. So yeah, that's my recommendation to you tea drinkers. Earl Grey tea. Anyway, so this video is a video on the new Mundo Rework. This is my first impressions, my thoughts on all the skins, my thoughts on all the abilities, and unlike other videos, I'm going to be putting in my thoughts of what are the best builds for him, all the possible items he can build, along with all the rune pages that he can go, because I think what they've done with Mundo is amazing, and he can basically be built like a juggernaut, right? With Stryberger and stuff, so yeah. Feeling good about sharing my builds with you guys. Anyway, so, let's just get right into it, I guess. First impressions, looks-wise, I have to say, he's a lot less funny than Old Mundo. Now, let me just explain why I think that Old Mundo was funny. Old Mundo was, like, the dumbest, ugliest character in the game, with, like, the weirdest model, right? With massive feet, and it's like, you know, he just looks stupid, he moves around in a stupid way, and that just made him funny, in my opinion, right? Because he was so out of place. And this Mundo, although it's, like, more realistic, not realistic, but it's like it's more in tune with the style of League of Legends. It's not as entertaining to me as previous Mundo, but you know his skins are basically infinitely better. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the skin spotlight videos on Corporate Mundo and stuff, but that skin is basically one of the best skins I've seen lately coming out of Riot games. Like it's got so many like fun jokes to it, a lot of great details, and honestly, like all the animations and stuff they have on the skin are perfect. So, I mean, you know, I applaud the Riot skin department for making something for one of our top lane chads instead of, you know, some stupid weeb thing, right? Anyway, let's just get right into the abilities because that's what we care about, right? The gameplay. His passive, Mundo goes where he pleases, or just goes where he pleases, is a very interesting sort of passive, and I think it's basically the biggest addition that they've done to him. Like, all the rest of everything, right, is kind of new abilities, but it's a lot of stat checky things, right? But this new passive is like some new gameplay thing, right? And I'll show you guys, like, you know, basically what it does with the dragon here, right? I'll put the auto-refresh health so I don't get killed. Basically, right, you guys see the unstoppable thing? Once he has his passive up, Mundo ignores the first CC that he gets hit with. Right? So the first crowd control that immobilizes him, he just ignores it. So I'll just display right here. We're going to attack the Drake. And normally the Drake knocks you back, but he just ignores it, right? And you can also pick the canister up, right? And once you pick it up, the canister, it heals you for 8% of your maximum health. And it also decreases the cooldown of this passive by 15 seconds. Also, when he gets immobilized, he also loses 7% of his current health, but then he restores 8% of his max health when he picks up the canister. So, this passive is actually insane, where you trade away a bit of your HP for the ability to ignore CC. This is insane in top lane, because if you guys know in top lane, a lot of champions just have like 1 or at most 2 bits of CC unless they're like a full tank. So like your Mordekaisers, your Dariuses, your Sets, you know, they basically just have one main crowd control thing. So yeah, it's very nice because like it allows him to basically just walk towards someone and just full on fight them face to face, right? And if he becomes outstat, I mean, if he becomes overstatted, right? And I know in typical Riot fashion, they'll just make him overstat and make him overpowered. But if he gets released overstat, then he's going to be basically unstoppable because you know, you can't really peel yourself from a guy who basically just ignores CC, so that's going to be interesting. But, you know, one good thing about it is that imagine a Quinn, you hit her with a hatchet and you walk up to her, and she can't like headbutt you away from her. So you just basically walk up to her and just murder her, right? The side of that alone is something entertaining to me, so yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this new Mundo and how he faces up against ranged top laners because historically Mundo has been very good into bad lanes because of how his Q works, right? And we're also transitioning to his Q. By the way, he gets 2% max HP HP regen every 5 seconds, but that's just that, right? But yeah, historically, Mundo has been very nice into range laners or like bad lanes. Not very good, but he's good at surviving against these lanes because his Q and its low cooldown basically lets him stand at like arm's length and just spam Q to CS and to adjust the lane and to poke the enemy down before going in, right? His Q is basically just unchanged. When he throws it out, it does percentage current health magic damage to the first enemy hit. It slows them, and it heals Mundo if it hits like a target, right? It heals for more if he hits a champion. But yeah, his Q is basically identical, and yeah, right. His Q is just gonna let him do a lot better into range matches. So I think he's a quite nice first pick, but I'll have to see how he basically evolves. Like this is my first impressions after all. His W is Heart Zapper. Now this ability is basically like the same ability as before, with like the flames instead of flames is electricity, but the new addition to it is that they've added this sort of like Tom Kench E mechanic, sort of, right? So I have it activated, right? And I'm gonna take a bunch of damage. So as you guys could see there, when you get hit by damage during the W, you have gray health, right? And you can reactivate the W to heal for a portion of the gray health when it hits minions, and for all of it if it hits champions, right? So yeah, it's not the most impactful ability per se, but I think it's quite nice in that like it gives him a bit more healing in his kit, right? So yeah, if you're just fighting someone and you activate it while they do a bunch of burst damage, you can quickly reactivate it to heal up everything. So yeah, it's quite nice if you're like, expecting a ton of damage. Let's say from Darius ultimate or like, a set W or something, right? Activate it, boom, take all that damage, and then bam, zap them again. But the key thing is you have to hit the enemy champion with the W, because otherwise it just won't like, it's not gonna, heal you as much, right? His E, I think, is another interesting change. It's basically the same as before, right? It's like an auto attack reset. It has a passive where it gives you a certain amount of attack damage, and the AD increases if you have lower health. But the interesting thing is this, right? So I have a bunch of minions here for this purpose. If you kill a minion with E, it becomes kind of like a projectile, like Scion E, right? So as you guys can see, it basically just becomes Scion E, right? So the damage of E increases based on Mundo's like missing health, right? So if Mundo has more missing health, the damage of E increases to like 60%. So the first target hit gets like this missing health, not missing health, but like this health, like the first target gets this increased damage from his health being missing, but all the other targets get like, basically don't have this, right? So the first target, as you guys can see, gets hit with a more like damage than everything else, right? So yeah, I mean, this seems like a very nice way to just poke someone down. And in my opinion, the max order is going to be Q, E, and then W, right? Because yeah, it's just going to be Q, W. And his ultimate is, let me just turn off the minions here because it's getting annoying. And his ultimate is basically the same, right? It just regens him a lot, but it's kind of like it doesn't have a cost, which was the weakness of old Mundo's R, where if he just ulted when he was low HP, you had like a tiny window to just quickly one-shot him before his HP regen kind of just accelerated and just, not accelerate, but before his HP regen took over, you had an opportunity to one-shot him when he ulted. But they basically made it so that R is way better when you're low HP, because when you press it, it instantly heals you. Like, it gives you instant 20% missing health, and then it gives you normal HP regen, right? So they basically designed its ability to be used when you're super, super low HP, right? So let's just get a bunch of damage, and then boom, it heals up a bunch. And like, it's basically our like, emergency button, where, if you're about to die, you just press this, and you just, become a monster, basically, and you can't be quite so easily killed, right? His ultimate also gives him 15% more movement speed, which lets him walk over people. It gives him attack damage proportional to his bonus HP, and it also gives him the regen, right? Over 10 seconds, which is, an insane duration, but it's like, you know, the basic duration of the old Mundo R. So yeah, it can basically last a full fight, which is insane. So yeah, those are his abilities. Now let's move on to the builds that I think would work for him. Okay, so mythics wise, right? It's very clear that he's basically built for tank mythics, right? I'm gonna go over these first and then the fun ones later. So he's basically built for a tank mythic. So Frostfire Gauntlet, Sunfire, and Turbo Chem Tank all work well on him. I personally think that Turbo Chem Tank out of the three is the best option because this version of Mundo, like, you know, he's basically made to just go in and be this unstoppable sort of, you know, monster, right? And with him ignoring CC, you know, it's going to be very nice for him to just, you know, he can just charge at someone and just basically kill them, right? So, yeah. I think Turbo Kim Tank is going to be a very nice option for him. But what, in my opinion, is another great option is Stridebreaker, right? Now, with this current edition of Mundo, right, he's not a very mobile champion, of course. He has a lot of movement speed, and Stridebreaker is basically the item that a lot of these immobile juggernauts use, right? He just gets a free dash every 20 seconds, which he can use to reposition for his hatchets, you know, get close enough so that he doesn't have, like, you know, if he misses a hatchet or something, he can just, you know, walk up to someone with a Stridebreaker slow. It just lets him do a lot of things, right? Now, if you land your hatchets, you might not have a use for this, but, like, with how fast fights are, it might be very important for you to just get on the target as fast as possible, and you can even extend the range of your hatchet. So I think Stridebreaker is a very nice option for Mundo. Now, one item that I don't think is so nice is Gore Drinker. Now, it sounds nice, right? Because he has a lot of healing in this kit, and the Gore Drinker is even more healing, but, like, the weakness of this Mundo is basically the weakness of every other Juggernaut, which is being CC'd, locked down, and then killed, right? And I don't think Gore Drinker helps a lot with that. So if you're going up to, like, an Enchanter or whatever, and she's just being annoying, then Gore Drinker isn't going to help you a lot, whereas a Stridebreaker is going to help you way more to function as, like, a catch champion, right? So, yeah. If I had to rank all the mythics, I would say the best is Turbo Chem Tank, right? Then it's the same tier with, like, you know, then it's Stridebreaker and these two in a tier, and then Gore Drinker can also work, right? The rest of everything doesn't really work that well as a mythic, right? And the only reason you would even build Gore Drinker is to just max up on stats, you know, and just be super stat tricky, which might be important to some matchups, but I don't see it, like, you know, helping that much in team fights, right? So, yeah, if we look at all of these abilities, we can very obviously tell that we need one stat above all, which is health, right? This version of Mundo needs health on every single item. Now, you can flex something like, you know, a Frozen Heart or something here and there, right? But you mostly just want to be sticking to, like, health items, right? So, a great aggressive option is obviously Titanic Hydra, because if you're building a lot of health items, right? Let's just get, like, a full build, and let's get, like, a Warmux too, right? You get a pretty decent amount of AD using the Titanic Hydra and using, like, you know, your built-in things, right? Like, Ultimate gives you a lot of, like, AD with your, like, bonus HP. So, you know, Titanic Hydra can just add to all that damage, basically, right? So it's a great option because it not only gives you damage, but it gives you a lot of wave clear, which I think is kind of, like, the thing lacking here, right? His wave clear doesn't seem to be too strong. He does have his W, but it doesn't seem to be very strong, right? So yeah, I do think that, like this build lacks wave clear, and Titanic Hydra is gonna work wonderfully with this new Mundo, right? Obviously, every single tank item is good on him, right? So almost all the items here, aside from, you know, the support items and maybe, you know, and of course Abyssal Mask, right? Because, yeah, of course, without excluding this and these two, he can just, you know, build basically anything here. There are fringe cases where you can get away with building Gargoyle Stoneplate on him, but I wouldn't recommend him too much because, you know, like, you really want to get that health to stack up both your damage and your tankiness, right? So, yeah. A weird but also a viable option is actually Sterax Gauge, right? So you can basically build him kind of exactly like Darius plus Titanic Hydra, because, like, if you're in, like, you know, against a team composition where they're very good at, like, you know, annoying you in a team fight and not letting you get to people, right? Sterak's Gauge is actually going to work quite well with you because the shield is going to pop up and it's going to stop the enemy's damage while you heal up with, your passive or whatever. So I would say Sterak's works quite well with him, right? What you build on him basically just depends on whether you're winning or not and, it's the state of the game, right? If you're in a more aggressive position, you can afford to go for, let's say you're winning, right? If you're if you're winning and you want a snowball, you can go for a Strybreaker, Titanic Hydra, and then maybe pick up a Sterak's and then go for maybe a counter item for the anti-heal, Spirit Visage to increase your healing, whatever, right? Like, you can go for some sort of messed up build like this that gives you a ton of damage and it just stacks HP, right? This isn't a very good late game build, but if you're basically just snowballing out of control, you might just want to stack all the damage and just be unstoppable, because this gives us basically 400 AD, right? So, yeah. If you are winning, you can go for these kinds of options that gives you both teamfight ability and also a lot of wave clear, but if you're in more of like a passive position, you might just go for something like, Turbo Chem Tank, which already has that Immolate passive, which gives you the wave clear. And then from then on, you can just go for a straight, tank, So, yeah, if you're basically in more of a losing position, you mostly just want to go for tank items with lots of resistances to, stack up with your HP, right? Because tanking up without resistances is a big no-no, right? Mundo has so much healing in this kit that, the enemy are always going to get anti-heal, but that's okay because he has so much healing in this kit that, as long as you land everything, you're going to do fine in a team fight, even if the enemy has anti-heal, right? If you're ahead, you can also go for some sort of messed up move speed centric build that just makes you, insanely hard to catch. With all the move speed, you're just going to be running up on people, and they won't be able to do anything, so if the enemies are hard to get to, you might be able to go for, a full move speed build like this, So, yeah, I think that is pretty much it for the build. I don't think it needs to get any more complex than that. Obviously, you can go for the counter items like, Bramble Vest or whatever, depending on the, the game state, or, depending on if you need it for the lane or something. But that is pretty much it for the builds. He basically just builds, a tank who can go for a Strybreaker, Titanic Hydra, Sterak's. He kind of builds like Scion, actually. So, yeah, take that how you will. So, yeah, let's just get right into the runes then. Okay, I think that this new Mundo can be flexed between a lot of possible builds, right? But I think the best rune page for him is going to be Conqueror, right? So, if my PC doesn't lag. So, yeah, I think the Conqueror tree is going to be the best for him because, if you actually saw a lot of his abilities, right? He had a lot of power-up things during his missing HP, right? A lot of things kind of scale off of how much HP he has missing, right? So, the precision tree is basically perfect for him because he gets that Triumph, right? Which is always good, right? Getting more healing on takedowns and getting 20%, getting 20 more gold. Legend Tenacity is going to be very, very important for Mundo, right? Tenacity is going to be insanely important for Mundo. And the thing I mentioned, Mundo is basically the most dangerous when he's at low HP. So Last Stand is going to work wonders for him, right? As for secondary trees, right? I don't think Domination is quite useful because Domination is Domination is good for when you're an assassin or when your champion doesn't have that much base stats, but Mundo isn't going to make much use of Domination. So Domination is basically completely useless in my mind, right? Sorcery might work secondary if you aren't taking a teleport. So if you're going for a Flash Ignite or Ghost Flash even in some cases, then, Nimbus Cloak is going to be very, very strong on Mundo and Slayer is going to do wonders. So if you're not going to teleport, Sorcery is a good go-to. But aside from that, you're going to be going for Resolve for the most part because it gives you split push, potential with Demolish. You could go for Bone Plating, which is going to work insanely well with Mundo. You can go for Unflinching, which is great into CC teams. Revitalize, I don't think I need to explain why Revitalize is good, but, it increases his healing even further, right? So, if you're in a comfortable lane, you can just take a Revitalize and, Bone Plating, I guess, and just, be even harder to kill. So, I think like this tree is going to be the most common one for most of you guys, right? So Conquer Resolve is basically the go-to for you guys. With, of course, you know, well, not attack speed, but yeah. You basically have to go for the early resistances based on the lane, right? Just pick these based on the champion you're up against, right? I don't see the use of a lot of attack speed for him, right? So you don't have to go for attack speed always. And I don't see a lot of use of ability haste on him because his Q and stuff are already low CDR, and he's got some mechanics which, you know, take backs in the CDR, so I don't see much use for CDR. So yeah, right? It's going to be basically the AD or AP, most of the time AD, and then 2 resistances or HP if you're getting funky, right? You can go for inspiration, right? Depending on what you're trying to do, but I would heavily advise against it, right? Inspiration is just too messed up, and you're better off just going for a resolve or sorcery if you're not taking teleport, right? As for keystones that you can take, I think a possible option is phase rush, right? If you're going for jungle, right? If you're jungling on Mundo, a page like this might be quite nice, right? Or a page with resolve, you know, you can go for something like this too, right? If you're jungling with Mundo, then phase rush is going to be very nice for you, right? Because a lot of junglers abuse phase rush, and it gives them a lot of mobility. Like, they get a few attacks off. The good thing with Mundo is, like, he can just get, like, a Q off, and a W, and an E, and he kind of starts the process of activating phase rush before he gets onto the enemy opponent. So, yeah, he can activate it quite well and just walk up on people. In terms of top lane, I don't think phase rush is going to be that useful for top lane, but it might be useful if you're up against, like, a team where you can get on them, but they just have a lot of peel, so, you know, you just need to move around quickly, right? But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it too much. One thing I've seen people run that I would not recommend is Grasp. I don't think Grasp is that good on Mundo at all, because, like, Conquer just makes way more sense, right? And also, right, I mean, like, yeah, Conquer just makes way more sense, because Mundo's going to be going for a lot of these longer fights, and although Grasp does more damage with more health you build, which is, you know, theoretically good on Mundo, you have to realize that, like, you know, Grasp only procs, like, you know, once every 4 seconds, whereas Conquer gives you a lot of AD, which makes every attack stronger. So your E's, your, you know, all attacks are going to be stronger in every second of the fight, instead of just, you know, getting one Grasp proc in, like, every once in a while. And if you're stuck in a range matchup, Grasp is going to be even more useless. So yeah, the recommended page that I would recommend personally is Conquer Resolve. Something like this. Of course, flex the Resolve builds based on the enemy team. And if you're, like I said, if you're not going for a teleport, then you can go for Nimbus Cloak to get that, you know, get that extra bit of cheese, I guess, in fights. And just ghost up on people, kind of like Darius. So yeah, I think those are the rune pages for Mundo. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Roku, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.